Okay, good afternoon again, everyone. Morning it is for Dr. Craig, who has joined us all the way from sunny California. Dr. Craig will be presenting the lesson on legumes, soy, and corn today. Just to let you know a little bit about Dr. Craig, he's a scientist, he's a nutritionist. I met him when he taught me a few modules from the health and wellness course at Newbold College. It's an Andrews course, and it was offered by Newbold College. Dr. Craig is an exceptional teacher. There is so much to learn from him that I'm really glad that you are all here today to benefit from his wealth of resource. And please do not let him leave without asking 1,000,001 questions. All right? Absorb as much as you can absorb from Dr. Craig today. Be like a sponge. So, Dr. Craig, welcome once again to the Natural Remedies Kitchen, VeganTrition, Cooking and Nutrition course. This is now class 5. Thank you very much for joining us. It's now your platform.
Well, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you. I wish I could look upon your faces, but I see your beautiful names listed here. Are you hearing and seeing my pictures?
Yes.
Okay. Let me. Okay, you all see the beautiful pictures from South Africa?
Yes, they are.
Yes, we can see them.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about soy and a little bit about their position as one of the main legumes, beans, lentils, peas, this family of plant foods that supplement the fruits and the vegetables, the nuts and the seeds and the whole grains in our plant-based diet. I gave a lecture on Sunday to ANDIA, Adventist Nutrition Dietetics International Association, and we had a number of interesting questions about soy, but we talked about how the foods, each one of them all provides for protection against chronic diseases. That's another lecture in itself. But today we want to talk about the value of legumes in our plant-based diet. When they are eaten with grains, they provide a high quality protein. Grains plus beans provide you with excellent quality protein. And they are in fact better than animal protein because they are low in saturated fat and cholesterol, no cholesterol in fact. And we know the dangers of getting too much saturated fat in terms of heart disease particularly. Legumes, reds, blacks, yellows, browns, all the different colors in the skins provide us with phytochemicals. And in the case of soy, they are isoflavones, which are health promoting bioactive nutrients or phytochemicals. The carbohydrates in beans, lentils, have a very low glycemic index, which means that when we eat, the digestion of the starch is slower, meaning that glucose is released into the bloodstream gently, and so we don't have a surge of blood glucose, which we don't want. We want a gentle release. And this is particularly important for those that have prediabetes. They're also rich in soluble fiber, which lowers cholesterol levels and blood glucose levels. And the fat in legumes is polyunsaturated fatty acids, or PUFA. This decreases triglycerides level and blood cholesterol levels significantly. Okay, so moving along, we see the collection of nutrients that's available. The recommendation is that we should have 1 to 2 servings a day. We receive from the legumes, peas, beans, and lentils, protein. They're a good source of iron and B vitamins. Some have calcium. They all have fiber and phytochemicals and low glycemic carbs, as we've mentioned. So they are a very good package of nutrition that we should utilize every day. Now, there's all kinds of meat analogs or substitutes on the market. And people say, well, you might as well eat meat because of all these processing and what have you. But the data shows that these actually are protective against chronic diseases, and they are also low carbon footprint compared to beef. So don't let those words fall from your lips that those meat analogs are just like eating meat. They're not really, but we are here promoting the better form of plant protein, which is eating the whole food, the beans, peas, and lentils. And of course, we do process these. We do soak them, cook them, season them. And so they are not entirely unprocessed. That's not possible. We can't eat raw beans. We have to cook the chickpeas and the pinto beans and the black-eyed peas and so forth. And when you look at legumes, including soy, this is one of the 4 plant food groups if we put fruits and vegetables together. And you see here the chronic diseases that we are afflicted with. And almost in every case, we get a solution from that plant group. And for legumes and soy, we see that there is a check or an X in all the boxes. If we were to add another column, obesity, which is another chronic condition afflicting Western humankind, men and women, we see that we would see that there is an X in the box for all of those food groups. So this is important to recognize that legumes provide us with significant protection against all the ills and ailments that are afflicting Western society. Beans reduce the risk of mortality. The studies show that eating a serving a day can lower your risk of heart disease and cancer and so forth. But looking at mortality overall, the data here, every 20-gram increase, that's almost an ounce, increase in legumes a day will give us a 7 to 8% reduction in risk of mortality. Okay, what has come up here? What are we getting? Can somebody help me remove? I guess we can X this out. Sorry. Okay, so here is the data that shows eating regularly in the yellow 4 times a week, almost every day, 22% lower risk of coronary heart disease. Black beans, 1/3 of a cup, this is cooked, 38% less likely to experience a heart attack compared to those who didn't eat beans at all, less than once a month, essentially nothing. So almost 40% lower risk of a heart attack from eating a third of a cup of black beans every day. This was in a study of people over 10 years. So the recommendation is generally that we should eat about half a cup a day of cooked legumes, lentils, beans. It lowers our cholesterol. You can see the blood lipid values here, cholesterol levels 0.2, 0.3, 0.5 for triglyceride millimoles per litre reduction, and not in your good cholesterol. In this case, there's a slight elevation. And we're not talking about soy, we're talking about all of the legumes. Okay, this was a combination. These results combine 10 different clinical trials over 1 to 2 months observation of people that were taking these. We mentioned also cancer and many different studies, 30 or 40 different studies combined here, and the reduction in cancer risk is 30 to 60%. So again, many different cancers, we see significant protection from regularly eating legumes. Type 2 diabetes. This was the China study, and you can see here comparing consumption of, on average, about 65 grams a day compared to those eating about 12 grams. So this would be the upper quintile versus the lowest quintile. And you can see for all legumes, the reduction is 38% from 1 down to 0.62. That's 38%. Soybeans, it's about 50% reduction. Peanuts, about 20%. Soya milk, about 40%. So a regular consumption of legumes, half a cup every day, lowers your risk of heart attack, cancer, and diabetes. That's a win-win-win situation. Okay, so that's the background, the general broad picture for legumes. Now let's zero in on soy. Soy is a unique legume in that it is loaded with a particular chemical, bioactive nutrient, what we call isoflavones. The two major ones are genistein and diadzine. And we'll see the value of these phytochemicals as we move along. The protein in soy is a little different from that in other legumes in that it has a very good balance of amino acids. And this means that it doesn't have to be mixed with grains to provide with the protein that can be fully utilized by the body. So the sulfur-containing amino acids are present, and this makes the protein indistinguishable from meat, milk, or egg, as shown by Dr. Young, the late Dr. Young, in his research at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston, where he fed different types of protein to human beings, and he found that soy protein was not in any way could be distinguished from animal protein in providing an adequate nitrogen balance to college students there on the campus in Boston. Now, subjects with elevated blood cholesterol levels that were given soya milk were found to experience reduction in LDL cholesterol. So most of the soy beverages contain 7 or 8 grams of protein per cup. That compares very favorably with dairy, which is 8 grams. This is not true of coconut, rice, almond, and some of the other beverages, which have 0 to 1 gram only of protein. And in many cases, they are not properly fortified. So soy milk is one of the preferred non-dairy beverages. Pea protein would also be another one. the protein from green split peas, we would probably call them lentils, is also providing you with a beverage that's about 8 grams per cup. So these are the preferred beverages to get adequate protein, and they usually are well fortified with vitamins. Studies have shown that soy in the liquid form is more effective than soy in the baked form. So putting soy flour in your muffins or bread doesn't have the same cholesterol lowering effect as when you drink the soy as a beverage. What about young children? Is this also applicable for children? The answer is yes. They studied soy fortified, or soy was added to the diet of young children, mean age 9 years. And after 2 months, they saw a reduction, very significant reduction, up to 25%, which is more significant than a standard low-fat, low-cholesterol diet. So it's good not only for adults, but also for children. And the genistein, the isoflavone that we mentioned, not only lowers your cholesterol, but it does other cardioprotective things. It protects your LDL from being oxidized, and this is the major factor which is involved with cholesterol deposits and plaque development and blockage of coronary arteries. It prevents blood clots. It helps with the blood flow, with the relaxation of the blood vessels, which moderate blood pressure. And after damage in an artery from heart attack or so forth, they help with repair processes. So these are all processes that help protect against cardiovascular issues. Now, what about cancer? Studies with Asian populations reveal that regular soy consumption will lower your risk of many different cancers by 30 up to 80%, depends on the population group, depends on how much is being consumed, depends upon the target tissue we're looking at. All the studies are different, but combining them, we have this very significant reduction in risk of cancer. This was study from the Adventist Health Study in California, and you can see that for men, prostate cancer risk is significantly reduced. The blue is those not using soy milk, the green drinking 1 cup a day, about a 20% reduction. Those drinking 2 or more was even more significant. Now, I placed a little line here because this study was done with a small number of subjects, and it has been repeated by other groups. And the more consistent picture that you find is with 2 or more cups, the reduction is somewhere around here, about 30% reduction. This is probably an anomaly, which often happens when you're dealing with small numbers of subjects. Now, regarding women and risk of breast cancer, Asian American women, you can see setting the risk at 1 for those not eating tofu. Those who eat tofu essentially every day, a 30% reduction in risk of breast cancer. And in the women who were born outside of the United States and who ate soy products, tofu, soy milk, whatever, during their adolescence, during puberty, they receive an extra protection as they get older, 20% further. So their protection is 50%. And the reason is from studies is that it's shown that going through adolescence, the risk of breast cancer is significantly less protection is greater, rather. The risk is less, protection is greater for the young girls who eat soy. Now, the questions we always get regarding soy is, well, we read so much that these isoflavones are like estrogen. They bind to estrogen receptors. Yes, it's true that they bind, but they are not estrogen. They chemically look like estrogen somewhat, and they attach to estrogen, but there are two estrogen receptor sites, alpha and beta, and they act differently. And it's interesting that they act on breast tissue as an anti-estrogen, blocking estrogen, whereas on bone tissue and blood vessels, they have an estrogen-like effect. So it's really a win-win situation in that when we need estrogen benefits, they provide it. When we need protection from estrogen, it is also given. And so the detailed scientific literature doesn't really call these isoflavones in soy as estrogens, but rather as serums. They are selective estrogen receptors modulators. They attach to the receptors selectively, and they modulate how that receptor would respond. And so we don't want to think of them as dangerous chemicals in soy that are going to promote and enhance the development of breast cancer. This has not been shown to be the case. Soy not only has these isoflavones, but it has other interesting chemicals that have been shown to be protective against cancer, prostate and breast cancer. These are plant sterols. They are mimics like cholesterol, but they aren't cholesterol. They protect against cholesterol absorption. There are saponins and there are phytates. All of these compounds protect against cancer. Now, for some women, maybe 40%, hormonal replacement therapy is achievable by using soy. In that when soy is taken, about 60 grams daily, you get less frequent and fewer hot flashes, and maybe some other menopausal symptoms. This has been shown with Asian women who consume a lot of soy compared to European women who don't use soy products at all. Now, what about effects on the bone? Japanese study found that bone mineral density in the spine was greater in those that were eating more soy. And the effect of the soy isoflavones is more pronounced early in postmenopausal women rather than later. So in the first 3 to 5 years, it is going to be more effective in protecting against bone mineral loss. This was an Italian study done with postmenopausal women, bone mineral density, BMD, and you can see over a 2-year period in the spine and in the hip, those that received the genistein, their bone mineral density was increased, was stabilized. The women, elderly women, menopausal Italian women who did not get the soy isoflavone, their bone mineral density, as you would expect, decreased with time, diminished, both in the hip and in the spine. They measured markers of bone metabolism, and they found that bone turnover was such that bone disappeared with the placebo group, whereas bone increased with the genistein group. Soy beverages is a common form, other than tofu, of getting your soy products, I just want to emphasize that one needs to make sure that whatever beverage you are taking, you have at least 20 to 30% or more of these three important mineral calcium and 2 vitamins D and B12. If you're on a plant-based diet, these three nutrients are somewhat difficult to obtain from plants. B12 is not obtained at all from plants unless the food is fortified. D, maybe from radiated mushrooms or fortified margarine or milk, but generally it's very difficult to get. Calcium, green leafy vegetables have some. So your almond, oat, and coconut do not have the same level of protein as I mentioned, but whatever beverage you have, make sure it's fortified with these nutrients. Now, as we conclude, we've projected the positive aspects. There has been vicious attacks made on soy in the last decade because of its popularity and widespread use and its erosion of the meat industry. We see now huge growth in meat substitutes. I don't know, you living in different parts of the world, but Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods, and others are putting on the market patties and burgers and minced meat that are made from soy and pea protein and so forth. And there's just tremendous backlash from people who don't want to see people using soy. And some of the criticisms for soy have been listed here: inhibiting thyroid medication, impairing male fertility, enhancing breast cancer risk, not being suitable for children, particularly infants, having a negative effect on cognitive function, and allergies. Now, I'll say quickly, we don't have a lot of time, but all of these things have been discussed. Some of them have been debunked. Soy does cause allergies, but it isn't any greater than nuts or egg or milk or some of these other things. It does inhibit thyroid medication, but it doesn't have any effect on the thyroid of healthy individuals. So those who are taking medication need to up their medication. It does not impair spermatogenesis or the virility of males. And children have been using it for 6 decades, and we have not seen any impaired growth, physical or mental, or any abnormalities in any way. Here is the information about the thyroid. It does not affect healthy men and women, and there are other thyroid interfering foods. We don't want to just target soy, but cabbage, millet, kale, Brussels sprouts are some other foods that act similarly to soy. What about the risk of breast cancer? This is usually the biggest interest that people have. You can see here the data, those not using hardly any or any at all soy. We're putting this here in the blue. The risk of breast cancer has decreased 12% from having 10 milligrams of isoflavones would be like half a serving a day, and 29% reduction. In other words, the more soy one eats, the greater the protection. Now, what about women who had breast cancer? They're scared off by some physicians from some social media sites. There's been some long-term China studies with women who've had breast cancer, and in a large number of women, almost 1,500 that were followed for years, they found that soy foods did not have an adverse effect on breast cancer survival. So it didn't increase reoccurrence. So if you've had breast cancer, you may continue using it at the same level that you've always used it. You don't have to stop it. Certainly you don't want to increase it. I recommend not more than 1 or 2 servings of a soy food per day. You don't want to be eating it at every meal, considering it as some superfood or whatever. Here is the data regarding soy formulas. And so in summary, soy is highly nutritious. It's safe for children. It's good for the environment. We haven't told you that, but a gallon of soy milk only produces about 1/3 as much greenhouse gas as a gallon of dairy milk. Soy protects us against chronic diseases. It keeps our bones dense. It doesn't increase the risk of recurrent breast cancer, and the data doesn't show any impact on male fertility. Now, just as my last picture before we quit, say a word about Quorn, since this has become popular. It's been used now for many, many years. It's not a lentil or a legume. It's made from a fungus. It's what we call a mycoprotein. It's rich in protein and fiber, and that's why it's used as a meat substitute, because it has a texture and a protein level similar to meat. The texture. It may cause adverse reactions or allergies. Some people are allergic to this product. It is low in sodium and fat. However, it may be formulated where sodium and fat is added, so you need to read the label. Has no cholesterol, very low in saturated fat, and has a low carbon footprint, and 90% less land and water than meat. So it's good along many fronts. If you like the flavor of it, it will lower blood sugar and cholesterol levels. So it's acting in many ways similar to soy without the isoflavones. But again, read the label, because some products may have wheat or egg white added. And both of these products, wheat and egg white, can cause allergies in some people. So it's a universal principle for all nutrition. People, read the label. Products change. In my analysis of non-dairy beverages, I observed that fortification changes, ingredients change over time. So we have to be constantly reading labels to know how healthy the food is that we are ingesting. Okay, well, now it's time for Q&A. I will somehow we stop sharing here and look at the chat. Okay, CVD stands for cardiovascular disease. Sorry about that. Any other questions? I'm not seeing anything yet. Not sure if this has been said, but does it matter if the soy is organic or not? Well, it doesn't make a difference in terms of all the properties that I've said, whether it's GM or organic. But I will say that selection of food that is organic or hasn't been genetically modified is always an advantage. Organic, definitely, we have good data on that. GM, the jury is still out, but I would be cautious and select soy products which are GM free and are stamped as organic. That's just an extra health protection. LDL stands for low density lipoprotein. This is the form of cholesterol which is your atherogenic. It's the one that causes the elevation of your cholesterol, the total cholesterol measurement, which is the danger signal. You want your HDL to be high, your LDL to be low. LDL is the one that's related to heart disease. Is Quorn sort of like a mushroom? You maybe can think of it that way if that's how you want to. It's not an animal product. It's not typically a plant product. It's kind of in between, but it's definitely not an animal product. But there's no harm. Mushrooms have a good collection of minerals and provide excellent seasoning to our food. There are some mushrooms that actually, the white button mushroom that actually has been shown to have anti-cancer properties. If we are following an Edenic diet, should we be eating fungus? God said that we should eat plants, but fungus is not a plant. If you feel uncomfortable, then yeah, for me personally, I don't like mushrooms, fungus, or corn. There's so many beautiful beans and peas and lentils, and of course occasionally we eat tofu. But yeah, I'm not pushing any of these things. I'm just providing it to you as a from a nutritional standpoint. But if you are wanting to follow a strictly plant-based diet, then certainly you wouldn't be treading in that direction. Does soy milk help with ADHD children? I don't know any data at all that supports that. So I guess my answer would be no. Okay. Is that the end, or we have some more? What foods supply calcium for vegans? Well, your green leafy vegetables certainly are at the top of the list. These would be the kale, the Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and not your Swiss chard or your spinach, which, while they do have calcium, they also have oxalic acid, which blocks calcium absorption. But if you're not adverse to using fortified foods, then there are a number of good calcium fortified plant-based foods, such as I've mentioned with the non-dairy beverages. Some of these have 300, 400, and even up to 500 milligrams of calcium per cup. So you get a very good supply of calcium from one serving a day, so you don't have to worry. There are other foods, seeds and nuts have some, particularly almonds and sesame, so tahini would be somewhat, when I say that they are sources, of course, they are not in the same category as green leafy vegetables or your fortified non-dairy beverages. And again, I emphasize, read the label, because not every non-dairy beverage has fortification with calcium. Tofu that is precipitated with calcium salts rather than magnesium salts will also be a very good source of calcium. The question here, does tofu provide the same benefits as soy in the purest form? Well, there are some benefits. Tofu is the precipitated protein, so the carbohydrates, the sugars have been removed in the tofu production, and for some people, those raffinose carbohydrates, those sugars, are not easily digested and so may produce gas. So those who are susceptible to flatulence and discomfort associated with that would benefit from using the tofu. The isoflavones are bound to the protein, so you don't lose, well, there may be some 3 or 4% or something lost, but generally the isoflavones are all carried over with the tofu, so that's not a problem. So the answer to Richard's question about the same benefits, the answer would be mostly yes, meaning like 95%. Okay, how do you compare Quorn and other meat alternatives such as soy, mince, tempeh? I'm not so well versed on Quorn. Tempeh, of course, does have the advantage of having a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of B12, not really to write up about, but it also is rich in iron. And for some people, the flavor, of course, is a lot more desirable. For others, that fermentation is not so desirable. So I guess my quick answer is it boils down to preference. The nutritional levels are not hugely different, and it's more perhaps a question of mouthfeel, texture, preference of flavor, and so forth, and maybe price. Which bean, if any, provides a source of vitamin D? There's none that I'm aware of. Vitamin D we get from sunshine. We don't get any from about, for those living in the Northern Hemisphere, from about October to April. Those living in the Southern Hemisphere will be the opposite months. Those living in the tropics, many people living in the tropics do have darker skin, which blocks the sun's rays, and many times they don't go out in the middle of the day, and so they're not making vitamin D. So vitamin D is one of the nutrients that is challenging to get. So one needs to read labels and try to consume fortified foods where possible, but legumes are not going to help us for vitamin D. Is there a natural source of vitamin B, or do vegans need to take supplements? An excellent question. Vitamin B, I think the question refers to B12, since B1, B2, B3, B6, and folic acid, which is a B vitamin, are all easily obtainable from whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. So B12, there really isn't a natural source other than fortified foods, which is just another way of saying supplements. Instead of taking a pill, you're taking the pill that's in the food for you. So breakfast cereals, many have this added to it. meat analogues, many of them have it added to it, and the non-dairy beverages have it added to it. But again, in all three examples I've given, you have to read the label because there are cereals and meat analogues and non-dairy beverages that have zippo, absolutely nothing. And so you need to read the label. So if you're not using any of those and you just want to use whole foods naturally without any processed foods, whatever, then yeah, you have to take a supplement, 500 micrograms, 2 or 3 times a week. Coconut milk is used in many vegan meals. What is the nutritional properties? Many coconut, coconut milk is a term used for a number of products, but if you're talking about the commercial coconut milk that you buy, it really doesn't have a lot of nutritional value. It has a nice flavor, and the fat in it is largely saturated fat. It does have short chain fatty acids, which are metabolized a little differently, but using a little bit of it, it's not going to be a major issue. But if you are using every recipe with coconut milk and drinking 1 or 2 cups of it every day, I think it's overdoing it. It should not be used for children because the fortification levels generally are low and the protein is 0. There is 0 protein in coconut milk. So as somebody has put up here, label reading is a must. There may be some coconut milks that you have access to that are well fortified with calcium and B12. I know there are some, but generally, unless they are fortified with pea protein or sometimes with oats. Oats is now becoming a very popular milk beverage. Oats do have 2 or 3 grams. Flax also is being used for beverages that has a little bit of protein, but almond and rice and coconut generally have 0 to 1 grams of protein. I'm not saying that protein is king, but we don't want to be feeding these milks to children because they do need calcium and protein. Is it okay to cook with coconut oil? Yes, the coconut oil is not poison. I've been told it promotes high cholesterol. Well, too much coconut oil, particularly the oil, and if you take coconut, as we did when we lived in Africa, grated coconut from the tree, that's not going to be the same as coconut oil or coconut cream, which is the fat concentrated, and you're getting a lot more of the saturated fat. But if you're eating the coconut grated, then of course you're getting a lot of fiber and other things. So too much concentrated coconut oil out of a jar, yes, you need to be conscious of not overdoing the use of coconut oil. But a little bit is fine. Good seasoning. Use a little bit of it in your muffins or granola or something. A little bit is fine, no problem. But try not to use lots of the oil in every casserole or entree or whatever you call it. Okay? Good questions, all of them very good, thought-provoking questions. You're on target, and we hope that we have provided you with a balanced presentation with balanced answers so that we can make good choices, read your labels. Don't always follow your taste, even though it's important that meals be provided to families that they enjoy. Season them well so that people will enjoy the benefits of herbs and spices. which are also full of phytochemicals. Your garlic, your turmeric, onion, these ginger, these things are known to lower cholesterol and protect you against cancer, and some of them also protect against diabetes, such as turmeric. So we wish you the very best in your session, and for there we will turn it back over to the sponsors.
Thank you very much, Dr. Craig. That was very informative. All right, I know you just mentioned about the coconut oil, but in terms of cholesterol, plants don't cause cholesterol.
I'm sorry?
In terms of cholesterol, plants don't cause cholesterol.
What was the word you used? Palms?
Plants.
Well, yeah, there are 3 plants which do contain high levels of saturated fat, and it's the saturated fat which causes elevation in cholesterol. Coconut is one of them, and palm nuts or palm oil is another one, and palm kernel oil is because the palm has 2 types of oils, inside and outside, and the inside one is the worst. The outside one is not considered in the same category, but we can think of palm kernel oil and coconut oil as, when taken in large amounts, will lower cholesterol. There is no plant that contains cholesterol, but the 2 oils that I've mentioned, palm kernel oil and coconut oil, when they are used in excessive amounts, can raise cholesterol in human beings.
Should we understand that it can raise cholesterol in human beings that probably eat a rich meat eating diet, or that doesn't follow other health principles, that are probably already have cholesterol? I mean, what have the research actually shown?
The clinical trials have shown that when you give coconut, it does raise, I mean, we're talking about substantial amounts of coconut, it does raise cholesterol. We're not looking at on top of meat, eggs, milk, and everything else. It probably does not have an effect if you're eating copiously of all those foods, because you already have a high level of cholesterol from that. So in fairness, you have to do it in human beings that have more of a modest intake. So you would compare a high coconut diet with a low saturated fat, low cholesterol diet, and you would see in that case there would be an elevation. So I don't want to throw anybody into a tailspin, but I do want to emphasize the fact that because there has been big promotion on the web and social media, and Dr. Fife who is a naturopath who has promoted and written many books that are very popular in the United States, and I don't know throughout the world, but Dr. Fife has perpetrated this idea that coconut oil will lower your body weight, will lower your cholesterol, will cure you of diabetes, and the list goes on. And in most cases, none of this has been shown. And so people reading and hearing about this have gone overboard in just using coconut for everything and taking tablespoons of it every day for good health and strength and mental acuity. You know, it's even cures Alzheimer's disease. And that's part of his theory. And so there are people who are wanting to avoid diabetes and loss of dementia and all of this, and so they are taking spoonfuls of it all the time. Okay, my reaction about
It's excessive. It's excessive. The amount is excessive that he's.
Yes, it's over the top. You know, it's like some people reacted to soy when the news first came out 30 years ago of soy, this and this and this. good for those people eating soy everything. Soy cookies, soy nuts, soy.
It's too much. It's a good thing becomes bad because it's overdone.
Exactly. So that's what we're saying about coconut. Use it judiciously, but don't go overboard. Otherwise, the cholesterol raising effects will kick in. And like you said, the good thing can become a bad thing.
Okay, somebody says so people are saying the same thing about corn now. I mean, when I was in England, I don't get it here in Jamaica, but I use corn. But I use corn and I use soy meat and stuff like that. But it's not my daily diet. It's not something that I live on. There's so many other food, and you need to have a balance and a variety. And you're not gonna have a balance if you're eating the same thing every day. That's definitely an imbalance.
Right. Well, if you eat these processed foods once a month at a potluck or something, it's not going to crash your health. You know,
Exactly.
your health is based upon eating a wide variety from the 4 food groups, 4 plant food groups, and eating an appropriate quantity to maintain ideal balance weight, exercise, get your sleep, put everything in perspective, and you'll live a healthy life. But if you focus on one magic food, one magic bullet, I got to season everything with garlic or something or whatever it is,
Then your blood pressure gonna get low.
you're going to have problems.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was, sorry, my name is Christine. In terms of, I think what people do when they have a good food, they overuse it for one, they're not temperate with it. And I think it may affect people who's obese, who really have high cholesterol, like they say, oh, cashew is good and this is that's good. And what we do, we overindulge in it, and that will cause a high cholesterol level. So possibly, if you're eating a plant-based diet, and you're having coconut oil moderately and using it effectively, you will have no harm, I suppose. But if you're overweight and you're overusing and your health is not good and you're eating a lot of those good foods or taking too much of it, it may compound it. I don't know if that's an answer to it as well. It's just a thought.
Well said. Okay, we've got one other question that's come on. Can you explain thyroid with soy? There are anti-nutrients, what we perhaps could call them, that interfere with the uptake and metabolism of the thyroid hormone. It doesn't have any, and as I said, it doesn't have any negative effect on normal human beings, but with those who are hypothyroid, that interference does make a difference. So their medication needs to be upped. They need to increase, but they don't want to do this without consultation of a healthcare practitioner, your doctor or whoever you're seeing, so that they can monitor your thyroid function, do tests to make sure that whatever level of soy you're using, if you're using it like 3 times a week, you want to make sure that your thyroid medication adjusts to that. It may be that for you, you're not, that using soy 3 times a week doesn't have any effect. Okay, the question is, would it be good for someone who's hypothyroid then to have some soy? Well, it's good for everybody to have some soy. I can't answer precisely that the soy is going to moderate the hypothyroid metabolic effects. You would want to consult with your physician about that. I don't want to give medical advice.
Christine's hand is up, and then Dr. Craig, if you could just address the issue of fibroids and tumors. I mean, I know you covered that partly in your presentation, sugar tumors, cancer. But if you could just reiterate that bit again for me, please. Christine, you could go ahead with your question, then Dr. Craig will answer that.
Okay, whether soy increases the risk of breast cancer.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this has been around now for 20 years or so, and it's very strongly believed by people who read social media and the web and internet stories. But when you look at large clinical trials involving thousands of cases of women who are tracked over years, up to 5 years, there is no evidence that the consumption of soy for women who have had breast cancer, there is the slightest risk of increasing reoccurrence. There's just nothing to it. There's no data at all. Not even one study out of 10 would validate that. So I think a lot of it is fueled by the notion that these isoflavones that are in soy chemically look like estrogen, and in fact they are known to bind to estrogen receptor sites in the body. So for the lay mind, they immediately say, these are plant-based estrogens, they're dangerous, they're going to stimulate aberrant breast tissue, we're going to be at great risk. But when the studies are done carefully, there's just nothing there. And in terms of development of risk for women who've never had any breast cancer, for women who are without any disease, the consumption of, again, we want to emphasize modest soy. We're not talking about over the top. We're talking about modest soy use. Like I said, 1 to 2 servings a day at most. Then it actually lowers the risk. There's less breast cancer. There's no question about it that people who use soy products judiciously, women have less breast cancer and men have less prostate cancer, period. So the social media, the websites can blow the tune all the day long, but until I see new data, I'm convinced that soy is good, safe, and protective.
Okay. All right, lovely. Thank you. I think those questions have been answered already. Valerie's question and Alexandra's question regarding soy and thyroid. Okay, cholesterol has been answered. Alexandra, you had your hand up?
Yes, I would like to ask, is soya milk a good substitute for normal milk for a child?
Can soya milk substitute for regular milk?
For a child.
Okay, well, we needed the definition of a child. It varies.
A 12-year-old.
Okay. A school-age child, there's no problem at all, whatever. Our major concern is preschool children because, particularly the infant, because they're getting most of their nutrition from the drink, from the beverage. But a 12-year-old is eating a wide variety of foods, okay? And so the similarity of the soy with the dairy is not so crucial. However, if you are using one that is well fortified, there shouldn't be any difference. No difference at all. In fact, they are probably better off.
I was about to say.
What's that?
I said I was about to say, because they're not getting the hormones, they're not getting the antibiotics and stuff that is being pumped in the cows.
And they're not getting the saturated fat. And you might say, well, come on now, they're only a 12-year-old, yes. But I've tested adolescents who are meat eaters and milk drinkers, and their cholesterols are already starting to track towards adult levels of where heart disease can develop. So, yeah, the use of soy that's well fortified, as Davina has said, there are advantages. So I wouldn't hesitate at all, but read the label to make sure that it has calcium and B12 added.
Thank you.
Is soy okay for boys? Yes. It doesn't have any negative effect on, doesn't make them effeminate or make them turn genders. There are some people who want to say the use of all this soy is the reason why we're having so many transgender people today, because they're getting, you know, social media is wild. All these theories they come up with. There's no evidence that even in infants that the isoflavones have any negative effect. The body has a way of being able to modify and adjust in the absorption of these things, and there's children who've been raised on soy milk, infant soy milk, and then regular soy milk as they get older, compared to cow milk. We don't see any difference in academic ability or physical growth. They don't turn out to be pumpkins or rotten tomatoes or whatever people want to call. It's. I'm sorry to say, but it's just ideas, conspiracy theories go around, and the more times they are spoken, the truer they become. That's the way it is with human beings. You repeat an error so many times, then it becomes truth in people's minds, but it doesn't really become truth. Okay, I have people talk about concerns regarding the way soy, it's mechanically extracted. Noted concerns. I don't know what you're referring to. If the legume is, if it's extracted from the pod, I don't know that makes any difference. If the protein is processed, this is a normal procedure. No damage is done to the nutrients, no harm. So I would say these are not founded concerns. Okay, so we've brought some comfort to some people this morning. That's good. I'm glad that people can leave this class feeling great, feeling good, food in their closet. Okay.
Someone asking, I don't know if that's a question. Is it Elizabeth? About mechanical extract. Liz, I have people talk about concerns regarding the way soy is mechanically extracted. Are this
it's been answered.
Okay, all right, sorry. Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Craig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll check out until next time.
Yes, next month. But next month the timing will be easier, Dr. Craig, because we'll be doing it on Jamaican time.
Well, we wish you all the very best. You have some great instructors there, and at the end of this course, you'll be bursting with enthusiasm to share the good news.
Yeah, it's so hard anyway to really even relate anything to people out there about soy, because it's like they're wearing blindfolds over their ears.
Well, you've got to get the good news out there.
Yeah, I've got to. Yeah, but it is hard, but it must go out. I just get a little bit tired of trying to convince people sometimes.
Well, as you know, I grew up in Australia, and my mother used to cook a huge pressure cooker of soya beans every Friday that we would eat. Family, I had 3 siblings, and we would eat those through the weekend, and that was our year-round thing. We had I grew up on soya beans, and I don't consider myself physically or mentally deranged in any way from all that soya bean. I don't feel in any way effeminate, so
Of course not.
I can only testify that a long term, for 7 decades, I've been eating soya beans, and not only, I mean, I eat all the other
Other beans.
beans, and yeah, we have to get the good news out. It's healthy, it's good. Keep it up. Thank you. God bless you in your program.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Craig. God bless.
Bye, everybody.
Much. That was wonderful.
All
Bye.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. We will now hand over to Boosie. Boosie, are you in the room?
Yes, I am. Hi,
Okay, all
everyone.
right, lovely. Let's pin you to the screen. You know what? Let me what I'm gonna do, Boosie, I'm just gonna stop the live streaming.